Hopefully you're starting the week off right. And so I wanted to do a quick live stream here with a couple of my good friends. We've got Todd Armstrong and Christopher Dedeyan. Gentlemen, let me kind of bring you up onto the screen here. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you for having us, Todd and
Yeah.
Josh. Really appreciate it.
Thank you,
Yeah,
Josh.
for sure.
Appreciate it, man.
Yes. All right. So what we're going to talk about is something that, when I think about, we've just had like our three biggest months ever, and every single month is growing and growing and growing and growing. So a lot of times, people will say, "Oh, what are you doing? You're running ads." They want to know my marketing secrets, and you want to know what my it is the only thing. Now we manage our own platforms and et cetera. But the only thing that I can think of that we do for marketing is what we're going to talk about today. And that is that and we'll talk about this because I want to talk about, kind of the, personality, gentlemen, that this works really, really well for. But this is what I do. I don't spend any money on advertising. I haven't really in years and years and years. Not that I'm anti-ad, but I just found something that works a little bit better for me and my personality and certainly the services that we provide. I am a guest on podcasts, and I do that with a lot of regularity. As a podcast guest myself, I've been on over 300 shows. And because of that work and all of that effort that I've done over the past number of years, it has now put me in a position where I don't have to work as hard because my back catalog of appearances continue to pay me. And we'll talk about why that is. But Chris and Todd, do you want to maybe just kind of introduce yourselves and the work that you do?
100%. So once again, Josh, thank you for having me and Todd here and having this opportunity to present our podcast agency, Dedeyan Podcast Agency. And a bit like you mentioned, we saw a very interesting place in the market in regards to people trying to market themselves and doing, ads and X, Y, and Z, or going to networking physical events. But a great way to market yourself is through podcasting. And why that is because you're having an opportunity for 20, 30, even an hour long moment to speak with another host and to get on their platform and their community. So their community gets really a great understanding of who you are. So that's why it's something that we truly love, and we created this agency. And in fact, even before creating it, I was actually a client of Todd's, and I was exactly like you, Josh, to grow my own speaking and coaching business. I was getting on podcasts and I was getting great returns. As I started collaborating with Todd, we're like, hey, we should create this on our end and build something interesting here. And this is something that we're offering to our community. If you are a top 10 or top end entrepreneur and want to go to that next level, podcasting as a guest is a must. Todd, what would you like to add to that in regards to our podcast agency in that world?
Yeah. So thanks, Christopher. Yeah. I mean, all you guys are just spot on. Podcasting has become more and more of a priority, not just of entrepreneurs, solopreneurs and, but I'm talking CEOs of Fortune 500 companies. Mm-hmm. These guys are looking to get on podcasts because they know the impact that it can create. But it's one thing to get on a podcast, and it's something else completely different to get on the right podcast where there's alignment and there's synergy and all the things that make podcasting so effective when it comes to marketing your brand, marketing your business. I've been in podcasting for 5 years. And like Chris said, he and I started working together. We were introduced by a mutual friend, and I started rocking some shows for Chris, and he started seeing the impact. He was doing some podcasting before, but you'll hear a lot as we hop on calls and get to know everybody. You're going to hear a lot from me about alignment and synergy and those types of things. Mm-hmm. But that's what makes podcasting so amazing: alignment and community.
Yeah, for sure. To our friends that are watching this right now, you're happen to catch this live stream, comment below with the type of business that you do. And if you do it when we're live, we can talk about that use case and give you some advice on how I would knock it out of the park. You're talking with people, we're pretty experienced in this world. As someone who's been on 300 guest spots, I've had the opportunity to do a lot of testing. And I can tell you how to do poorly, because I've had some bad, I've had some bad placements, and I've also had some really good ones. And those really good ones are a lot of fun, because you'll get let's talk. I'll have you guys talk about this. What kind of good stuff happens? We already talked about who the audience is. Podcast listeners, by and large, that's where your decision makers are. They're all listening to podcasts. If they're driving the car, they're out for a walk, they're, have the opportunity to multitask. I am feeding myself, because I know that, the more people that I can build relationships with, I love reaching out to podcast guests. I love reaching out to hosts. I love networking in that world. But it's also, I love learning from other people's experiences. It's way more efficient than having to make all the mistakes myself. So that's who's out there, in terms of business objectives that you can accomplish. Chris and Todd, maybe you could kind of talk a little bit about what happens when you are a frequent guest on podcasts.
So I love that question, Josh, and you're so spot on. And there's two main things that really comes about when you're on guests on podcasts frequently, and these top end ones. First and foremost, I think my personal favorite is your networking. You're going to meet so many great people, top end entrepreneurs such as yourself, that you're going to connect with. You're going to build partnerships with. You're going to build like other businesses with. And funny enough, both of these gentlemen that are on this call, I met them via podcasting. I was on Josh's podcast, connected with him, never thought that we'd be collaborating in the way that we're collaborating over 2 years now. And Todd, exactly the same thing. So first of all, you are going to grow your network and meet people that are like-minded, that are building their own business and just really want to collaborate and grow together. That's number one. Number two, you're going to have a great possibility to sell your products, your services, your ideology. And then that's going to grow your overall appearance as an expert within your industry. So that's the main thing when it comes to certain people that want to come towards us. They're like, hey, I want to get just like an injection of like positivity, of growth, of fuel within my business. That's what podcast does. So I mentioned a couple over here. I'm going to let Todd kind of take away with the rest. What else are some of the advantages of being a guest on podcasts?
Yeah, it's, and it goes back to, and I'm going to say that word alignment again. And you guys know this, you've experienced it yourself, and anybody out there watching, listening now, you've been on podcasts and you've been on the right podcast with the right hosts, right audiences. And when that alignment's there, that synergy's there, the impact immediately that you will see in your business is exponential. I can't tell you how many times people have told me, because of a certain podcast that they went on, what it did for their business as soon as that podcast was published. I mean, it's amazing, man. I mean, I've seen companies saved through it. I've seen companies pivot because of it. I've seen companies go to the next level because of it.
It's my opinion that if you don't have any like major problems with your service or your sales flow or process, like if everything's okay there, it's my experience, it's hard not to ROI podcast guest work. And there are a lot of great agencies that are out there. And I would strongly recommend that if you can work out the budget, hire somebody, because there are advantages to working with an experienced agency. And what would some of those advantages be?
Yeah, so some of the top advantages, first and foremost, when you're working with a top end agency, is that you're going to be, just like Todd said, on the right shows. So it's not just getting to be a guest on a show. It's is that the right one that is probably aligned with your ideologies, with your services? Do they have the right community? Because when you're on the right show and you're speaking to this right audience, then you're going to have so much more opportunities with transactions, sales, and so on and so forth. The second thing we're going to work out over here is that your network is going to grow. It's just inevitable. And then finally, it's that ideology that you are aligned with the top end entrepreneurs, top tier CEOs, and so on. So just aligning those aspects, These are the main advantages, and it's not something that you have to go and kind of cold call other hosts and so on and so forth. And that's something that we do for our clients. So our client is very busy building their business, building their brand, so they don't necessarily have time to go find these top-end podcast hosts. We do that work for them and get them there so they could grow their business, their brand, and so on.
Yeah, that's a great point. And the other thing, something I'd like to add to that, is podcasts that are the types of shows that are going to make an impact and a difference in your business. These podcast hosts are getting inundated with requests. And so they don't have the time to vet all of the guest opportunities and people raising their hand going, can I come on the show? So by working with an agency, you're going to be able to cut through a lot of clutter. You're going to be heard and looked at a lot quicker. And the chances of getting on these bigger shows and these shows that you want to be on exponentially increase, because these shows of that magnitude will defer to relationships and people that they trust and that they've worked with in the past to help them make the right guest decisions.
Yep. It's the same thing in again, higher level sales, account-based sales, it's relationships. And if you try to shortcut the system, you get sloppy, you start spamming, which unfortunately I see far too often, especially, when I've looked at, VAs that specialize in podcast placements. I mean, I can tell you exactly what they do because I've done over 1,300 episodes for my podcast, The Thoughtful Entrepreneur. And I can tell you, there are people that are coming in and they've got representation from an agency. Then I see other guests that are maybe leveraging platforms that are out there. I see guests that are just leveraging a VA. I see guests that are doing it themselves. And, there's a difference. And so, we are also in a tricky spot. And a lot of podcasters, especially sought after podcasters, are just in a really tricky spot. Listen, we publish an episode every single day. So I can only feature 7 podcasts a week. I get 12 to 15 guests. Well, those are just the ones that actually get to the application stage. There's probably about 30 to 50 every single week inquiries that I get to be a guest on a podcast. Out of that 30 to 50, only 7 make it on the show. And I can tell you that if you're working with someone that knows us and knows our typical, how we work, you're at a major, major advantage, as opposed to if you're just trying the spray and pray method. All right, gentlemen, observations on what I just shared from the other side of it. And I know both you guys have been both hosts and guests, and now, again, working with top tier guests.
So I'm just going to say one thing and kind of leave this to the next level of this conversation here. It's such a huge difference what you just said, Josh, in regards to if you are presented to a host by somebody that they know and trust, they look at you already with a different eye. They don't look at, like you said, that somebody just spamming you and all that. They look at you as a thought leader, somebody that already has a certain quality. And that's what Todd does at such a high level. And I'll let him speak to this in a few seconds here of what relationship that he builds with the host. So when Todd refers somebody from our catalog of our clients and we say, hey, this is somebody from Dedeyan Podcast Agency, and we tell them to the host, they're almost always, bring them on because we only work with top end people. So Todd, can you tell us a bit more of the relationship that you build with these amazing hosts?
Yeah. And that's the only way to really do it. Because again, with alignment and synergy, there's no shortcut to finding alignment and where that lives and where synergy lives and who are the right people to be connecting. So the one thing that I do and that we do is there's not a single podcast host that we work with in our network of 500 plus shows that I have not personally been on a call with. I need to know them. If I'm going to find alignment effectively and properly, I've got to have heartfelt, heart-centered relationships with the host, just like I do our clients. I can't put more emphasis on the client, not the host, to find alignment. And so what ends up happening is it creates a lot of confidence. It creates so much confidence in the whole process and experience, so that it gets to the point that when I take a client to a show and I pitch them to a host, that host knows that I have their best interest in mind. They know that I, in my heart of heart, am convinced that the alignment and synergy is on point, that this is the type of guest that they're going to want on that show. And they, because of experience and the trust I've built with them, it makes their life so much easier. They know that I know all of that because I've taken the time to get to know them. I've taken the time to get to know the stories behind, man, how did you start this podcast? Tell me, what was the inspiration behind even starting the show to begin with? What's your what? What's your why? Tell me about the ideal guests that you're looking for. And I just create these awesome relationships with a host. So when I bring them opportunities for a guest for consideration, they know that I know all that because I've had those conversations with them, and I continue to have those conversations with them.
Yeah. So, gentlemen, because again, you don't work with everybody, and that would be one of the main differentiators between you and, another fine agency out there, is that your guests tend to be a little bit higher authority. So, if you're new in business, probably not a good fit. But if you're rocking it in business, you certainly have a pretty decent reputation. So there's a link in the comments below that you'll find. And we set up a shortcut link, and that's upmyinfluence.com/podcast agency. And then that will go, here, I'll put this on the screen right here, to this page right here. And you'll see exactly, explain a little bit about their methodology, Chris, you and Todd, and then who your fit is, a little bit about you guys. But mainly you want to scroll down to the bottom here. This is where you want to get, and you want to grab some time. So just pick a date in the future. And what happens on this 30-minute meeting?
Chris, you want me to take that?
Yeah,
so
go for it,
I'll tell
Todd.
you what happens. I get to know you. I want to get to know your what and your why. I want to get to know your personality. I want to get to know your podcasting goals. We'll talk about, ideally, if you go on podcast, a certain number of podcasts in a given month, what's our goal here? What are the types of categories that we want to get in? We'll talk a little strategy too, because I'm a big believer in category diversification. Let's not get too niche into certain types of business categories. Sometimes the magic happens when you diversify into different categories, but diversify strategically. And we talk about a lot of that stuff. And it's really just to get to know you, talk about podcasting as overall experience. I like to find out, how experienced are you in podcasting? And if sometimes, man, we have just rock stars that are very experienced in podcasting. Josh, they're like yourself. They've done hundreds of shows. And then you got sometimes, man, they haven't done, they may have done 25, 50 shows, but they have a great brand. But that 30-minute call is just us getting to know one another, finding that alignment, finding that synergy, see if it's there. And if it is, start talking about next steps.
Yeah. I can vouch for being a little bit thoughtful and methodical about your effort, because, again, if you're just going to work with someone that's going to be doing a spray and pray, has no consideration, we get, guys, I would say probably a good 20% of the pitches we get are so completely inappropriate for our show, at least 20%, probably closer to 30%. And that's your first clue that you're working with someone that's probably not doing you any good when it comes to your reputation. So if your reputation matters to you, if your business and your good name matters to you, it's probably appropriate to invest a little bit more money, make sure that the people that are going to be serving as your concierge, your liaison, between these influencers that are out there, you want that to go well.
100%. I love that, Josh, because that is a great point. And for me as a customer, when I started this journey, even before I started the agency with Todd, is when I was getting booked on shows and I was working with Todd back in the day, he used to tell me, hey, Chris, this is going to be a great possibility, or this community is great on the speaking side. So talk about more your speaking career on this end so you get more speaking opportunities. Or this show is more on the coaching side. Chris, talk about more on the coaching side because you'll get more executive CEO top end coaches that you want. So just like Todd said, when he's going to be speaking to you in that 30-minute call, we're first going to see if our synergies align and if we can serve you. And just like Josh said, if you're that top tier person, and then if that everything aligns, then it's about strategy. It's like, what is the proper show that's going to serve you and your community best to go on these right shows in that regards?
That's awesome. All right. So the website, you'll see that down below, it's Up My Influence, a shortcut link there. It's upmyinfluence.com/podcast agency, all one word. And that'll forward you directly to your scheduling website. This is what you'll see here. Scroll down to the very bottom, grab 30 minutes for a strategy call, just to make sure that this would be a good fit. And then you can start mapping out what kind of shows do you want to be on? Why do you want to be on those kind of shows? And then you guys will likely, come to the table with a lot of recommendations based on the goals of the guest. And so again, the website, you'll see linked in the comments below. You can do a direct link there and click that and just make sure that that's a good fit. I'm not sure if we talked about full disclosure. I'm not sure. We may have an affiliate arrangement. So I have since forgotten since we went live. But if we do, we always make donations to great veteran-owned business causes. So if you use that link, we greatly appreciate that should you decide to work with Chris and Todd. So Chris Dedeyan, Todd Armstrong, thank you, gentlemen, so much for this great conversation. To our friends here, get your butt on podcasts. I've been doing that consistently while everybody else has been chasing shiny objects. You know what? I stay consistent. I stay in my lane and I know what works and I keep doing it over and over and over again in front of just, my dream customers, the kind of customers that I really want to be in front of. Plus, again, when you're on a podcast too, it just gives you so much opportunity to repurpose that long form content, which we really didn't even talk about that, which is a huge prize. Yeah. And most podcasters that you work with are thrilled to have you re-promote, and repurpose that content from that show. So Chris and Todd, thank you so much for joining us in this conversation.
Thank you, Josh. Appreciate it.
Josh. Thank you very much.